I'd like to welcome everyone to a look at the Arcanist in Grim Dawn. This class was released yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before, depending on how this is going to be released. And the Arcanist is a pure spellcasting class. The Occultist, kind of a spellcaster, mostly a spellcaster. They're kind of more along the lines of a summoner status mage, while the Arcanist is your wizardy spellcaster. Today we're going to be looking at the active skills and talking a little bit about the passive skills of the class, and then I'm going to go clear out probably Hallowed Hill with my current build. So the first of the active skills is Iskandra's Elemental Exchange. And this is an active passive that you toggle on. It reserves a chunk of energy, costs a little bit of energy per second that you won't notice, and it adds a flat amount of elemental damage to all of your attacks and all of the attacks of your allies. And there's a small chance that you will leech energy from your enemies. This, when you activate it, comes in the form of a glowy blue hand, and it will give it to your allies, and it actually gives it to the NPCs. The second level 1 ability is Panetti's Replicating Missile. And Panetti's Replicating Missile is a simple magic missile that when you hit enemies with it, and we will go and try to hit enemies, that when you hit an enemy with it, it will split. Okay, go forward, get up, and as you can see, it splits off the enemies. These are dinky little level 1 guys, so they die real quick. And Panetti's Replicating Missile is probably your go-to ability if you're dipping into this class from another class, or if you're using this class in basically any combination of classes with the Arcanist. Panetti's is a good go-to for a sidearm attack. It costs next to nothing, especially when you get high spirit later on, because I can cast it and you can just see my energy is just twitching. It's slowly going down, but that's because I cast kind of quick. But even then, it's not anything obscene, and it's basically going to become a left mouse click attack when you're using it. The passives for it, of note, if you're using an ethereal damage build, this is actually a really solid choice for your left click to put a point in here, because it adds ether damage, and it allows the bolts to pass through enemies, which makes it a great mass, easy, cheap, kind of weaker hit. But also it combines well with Supercharged here, which adds a small bit of stun chance, which is great. You'll definitely notice it when you have hordes of mobs, and if you lead with this and go to your other main ability, Panetti's is actually a good, like, shoot out maybe 3 or 4 missiles and then go to your main thing, because you'll stun maybe 1 or 2 enemies. Proliferation is also good for ether damage or elemental damage, and it adds more fragments to the replicating missile. The level 5 abilities are Alexra's Flash Freeze and these names sometimes. Kalidor's Tempest. These are AoEs centered on you. And Alexra's Flash Freeze, it is a Frost Nova. It is everything you would expect out of a Frost Nova. It freezes enemies for a quick second. And that's that. Kalidor's Tempest is this AoE, and it's a bit like Explosive Blasts from Diablo. And if you have it on your your skill bar, you have to button mash it to get it to work. But if you set it as your left click, you can click and hold, and it explodes. If I were playing like a melee mage of some kind with this class, I would definitely consider this as my main ability, and then mix in your flash freezes, because it's all in a radius directly around you. And actually, if you're mixing Nightblade, this is a pretty solid option for your build. Mirror of Erocrates? Erocrates? Is that Erocrates? Mirror of Erocrates is a defensive ability. It puts up a screen around you, and for a very short amount of time, that gives you damage absorption and reflects damage back at the enemies. Trojan Sky Shard is a pretty basic meteor-like attack. It has a very quick cooldown, so you'll be casting these, if you choose to make it your secondary ability, quite a bit, and they are quite damaging. The only thing to note is if you're by trees or under awnings, they will sometimes get caught on top of the environment. As you can see, none of them landed, so you have to be kind of careful with that with Trojan Sky Shard. Maven's Sphere of Protection is a Sphere of Protection. It is a fairly standard globe that reduces the damage you take, and it gives you a chance to avoid projectiles. If I were to make choose a defensive ability, I would probably jump this up quite a bit. Right now I'm building up another ability, but that's a choice for my next thing to increase. I haven't actually used Nullification. So I actually don't know. Target area, purging all enemies caught within her. Okay, I haven't actually used Nullification. I don't think the buffs really last long enough in this game to justify this more than a 1-point wonder ability. So I would assume you hit enemies, and if they have a buff, it gets torn off them. I'm probably gonna respect that point. The main ability that I'm using is this one, Albrecht's Aether Ray, which is, Albrecht's Aether Ray is a death ray, and it is awesome. It's a channeling spell, so you do have to sit still to use it, but it absolutely wrecks enemies once you hit them with it. There's a slight delay in your casting of it, so you can't actually like do any sort of stutter stepping with it, but it is immensely powerful. Even when it's not leveled up, it's really strong. And I'm actually considering, with the way a channeling spell works, not to level up this main ability and maybe level this one up. Oh, even though that does have a big jump in cost, because it does jump the cost up quite a bit as you level it. Reckless Power is we're gonna put my shield back on. Reckless Power is kind of like Archon from Diablo, except not like Archon at all. It is a sort of super mode where you lose 20% of your health, and you gain a large chunk of damage. Activating it puts this glow around you, and when you hit enemies while you have this active, you just deal a good more chunk of damage with it. The cooldown on that is actually pretty quick, given its duration. So popping, my common thing to do when I come upon a very strong either hero or a very large group of mobs is to pop my 2 defensive abilities with this, so I get a large defensive boost in addition to having my Reckless Power, and that will generally give me enough oomph to just lay waste to an entire group of enemies, especially since I lead with this ability, Devastation. Devastation is lots and lots of rocks from above that are just death. And Devastation has a special thing. Oh, Devastation and Albrecht's Ray of Power, or Albrecht's Aether Ray and Devastation both require you to have a caster offhand. And I'll get to a point about that in a second. Devastation, the special thing with Devastation is if you cast it and don't move at all, there's a chance you'll cast up to 2 more waves of this. And this absolutely destroys groups of enemies. So my standard thing to do is pop all my defensive, just pop, pop, bang, and then hit destruction with all my buffs up to absolutely face wreck large groups. And then I tend to pick things off with my Death Ray. When I'm low on energy, I will switch to Panetti's Replicating Missile. I kind of just want to say Magic Missile because it's just easier to remember it as Magic Missile. But also, Panetti's works as a good leader as well, so I can often do that and then pop my 3 cooldowns and drop a Devastation on the area and then clean up with the beam. If I'm fighting an enemy hero, I will definitely keep an eye on all my cooldowns because this requires you to sit and channel. So it's really hard to actually get... It gets kind of difficult sometimes to use it and deal a lot of damage with it. That being said, I do have Alexra's Flash Freeze on my bar, which is great for either making things hold still so you can hit them with your Devastation or your beam, or as an escape, because once they're frozen you can just run away and set up a good place to channel again. Because of the cooldown on this, you actually get to use it quite a bit. 10-second skill recharge is not a lot by any means. And yes, I do have a fairly good offhand that increases that. Passives. The first one is Inner Focus, which is just a straight up damage boost. And it's definitely a candidate for me to max out after I max out Albrecht's Aether Ray. On Iskandra's Elemental Exchange, this would definitely be a combination if I were going with the Occultist. You lose elemental damage when this is up, but you'd gain your pets would gain increased damage. And then there is Overload, which adds a chance of electrocute and more damage on. And then Elemental Balance is more damage, more different types of damage added on to this. This is either going to be a one-point wonder for pretty much anyone, or something to build around, depending on how you're building your character. A Warrior Mage, I would definitely consider doing this. If you're playing in parties a lot, I would also consider doing this, because it does spread to your party members. On Kalidor's Tempest, there is Wrath of Agrivix, which is looks like it makes it a knockdown and deals more damage. And then Inferno, which makes it a fire damage. It reduces the target's armor. On Maven's Sphere of Protection, you get Conversion. 20% of energy absorbed 20% energy absorbed from enemy spells, and you have reduced durations and everything. This I'm probably going to sink a single point into, just to make the energy shield better. Up here we have Fabric of Reality, which is a flat damage boost and energy leech. Again, this is one of the candidates I may go for maxing out. On Reckless Power, you have Unlimited Power, which increases your total damage, but lowers your elemental resist. And Ascendance, which is a extending portion of your arcane power. I believe it's you and your allies, while you're under the effects of this, get a bonus. Or it might just be your allies. I don't know, I haven't tested it yet. Under Albrecht's Ray, we have Tainted Power, which changes the Aether damage of the ability into Chaos damage. And Disintegration. Now, I'm actually torn between increasing this or this, depending on the cost of the beam as you level it up. I am sort of focusing on Aether damage, though. So having a flat Aether damage focus on this seems a little better than the percentage Aether damage on that. If I got an Aether damage weapon, I would maybe consider switching the points over to this. We'll have to see about that. Devastation has no associated passives, but it doesn't need it. Under Alexra's Flash Freeze, we have Absolute Zero, which is Frostburn damage, cold damage, and a slow. I would assume the slow is after the freeze. For Frozen Sky Shard, we have Frozen Core, which when the Sky Shards land, there's a chance that they will explode, I believe, for cold damage. And Shattered Star, which I believe is the same thing. And then we have Arcane Will. When you're below 50% health, you get a damage bonus and your skills cost less. This, I have an amulet that's increasing the points in it. And I think this would be an interesting thing to try to build around, maybe. And I'll bring up a point in a minute about the Arcanist. And finally, we have Mental Alacrity. And this is a flat casting speed bonus and skill energy cost reduction. And this, and this are all passive candidates I'm considering leveling up. I may just level them up like with 5 points each, because they all seem like they'd be really solid choices for passive abilities. My build is based around Albrecht's Aether, as I mentioned before, so having that cheaper and absorbing and just more Aether damage just seems like a solid bonus. But also having more spirit means more energy and more energy restoration. So all three of these are potential abilities to keep the higher costed abilities more manageable. Now I will note one thing about the Arcanist. They are very, very squishy. They are the epitome of the squishy mage. So you definitely need at least 1 point in Maven Sphere protection. And I would actually suggest putting a point into Mirror of Eroctis? Whatever. The two passive defensive abilities. I would definitely put 1 point in each, and I would actually consider putting more points into both of these. At the very least, I would consider doing that one, just because it lowers the recharge on it and reflects more damage. This one, I believe that 50%, minus 50% total damage is your total damage. So you do lose a bit of oomph when you have that up, but I think it's worth it, especially if you combine it with Reckless Power to make up for it. But you are going to be hurting quite a bit, and I have spent most of this character's cash on potions, and I only have 5 of them right now. So that is something to keep in mind with the Arcanist, is you are very, very squishy. Probably the squishiest class in the game, because you don't have a heal to make up for any damage you take, like say the Nightblade has, or the Occultist has, and you don't have a lot of prevention like either of these two classes have. So you are going to end up, I mean, you have prevention, but it's nowhere near what these two classes can have, especially soldiers with high physique. Now, before I go to the field, I will note, combinations with these, there's really a lot you could do with the Arcanist in combination with other classes. With a soldier, you can go into your squad tactics to get more damage, and there's a lot of things related to physique and defense you can take with the soldier. And with the soldier, you can combine it with your melee AoEs and the Elemental Exchange. I'm just not going to bother with the names. The Elemental Exchange, Kalidor's Tempest, and Electra's Flash Freeze if you're playing a melee build, because you can just blast these very close to enemies and deal quite a bit of damage to them while having the soldier's defense. Alternatively, you could go ranged with the Elemental Exchange and Panetti's Replicating Missile, because you can always get a gun with a soldier and use that. Demolitionist is probably the one I can't think of a build directly for, because they're so heavily using fire. I think Electra's Flash Freeze might be something to consider, because it lowers the enemy fire resist. And then you could combine that with, say, the Fire Donuts. But I could also see maybe using another fire skill. I don't think there's any major fire skills this class has. I mean, it does have fire damage. The Arcanist has, I think, every damage type you could want. So it does combine well with the classes in those regards. Oh, here we go. You could even go with Calidor's Tempest and Inferno if you want to spend points to get to 20 to make it a fire ability. The Occultist, I would say, would be the strongest combination for maging, because a lot of Arcanist abilities, like, say, this one and this one, are just flat elemental damage, and the Occultist has vulnerability very early. So the Occultist, if you mix those two together, you will actually get a pretty solid build out of very simple things very early. Because you could use this ability, you could use the Elemental Exchange and Replicating Missile, hit an enemy with vulnerability, and then just spam this at them. And you could take this farther to get to the stun, but you don't necessarily have to. And the stun adds more elemental damage on. So actually that'd be a pretty solid thing to do, because you could also combine it with this ability to give your pets 30% bonus elemental damage, and the pets are in this class. So you could have a Hellhound, which gets ridiculously powerful, dealing even more damage. Fine with the Arcanist and the Nightblade. The Nightblade has a lot of cold abilities that happen directly around the character, so I could see it easily combining with Electra's Flash Freeze. And I'd even say Trojan's Sky Shard, because you can just deal out a ton of cold and a ton of freezing in combination with the Nightblade. And Nightblade would give you that heal ability. Is it the Penumbra ability? I don't remember. I haven't played a Nightblade in a long time. So you could actually get a pretty solid close-up melee fighter, but also you could do some range stuff with it as well. So that was me rambling about the Arcanist for a while. So enough talk already. Let's go to Hallowed Hill. One of the things about Pedetti's Magic Missile. One of the things about this game's Magic Missile. It's terrible at breaking down doors. At least as a 1-point skill, it's terrible at breaking down doors. It's not like it's easier to just use your well, it's easier for me to just use Albrecht's Aether Ray on the doors and walls. Okay. We're at the hill. We're gonna put down a town portal. Because one thing about the Arcanist, you are really, really squishy. Ooh. Oh, it's a shield. I was like, oh boy, it's something green. You're really squishy. Doors are your friend. Learn to use doors if you're using the Aether Ray. Because enemies will be forced to run through a choke. Ouch! No, don't. Ugh. Or will be forced to run through a choke point. Ooh, a plan. Nice. This is already a better farming run than I had before. Run away. One thing about the Aether Ray is you will end up getting interrupted quite a bit while doing it. So be prepared to run. I really want to try to build something based off that. Based off destruction, just pure wreckage of face. Yes, give me bits and tonics. it's just zombies. I was wondering if one of the Aether crystals that's up here was trying to get me. Whew, that was close. Ow. So yeah, like I mentioned, I don't know if I want to actually fully level this up, but I'm gonna. At least make sure I have a lot of spirit going on, because the higher you get that, the more it's going to cost per tick, which means the less you can actually channel it, which channeling builds can be a problem. Devil touched ammo. Oh, it's a component. What? I forgot the ammo was componentized. Okay. I will say it is really powerful though, still. The beam, even when you can't channel it for as long, it does still get really strong. So it may be worth it, it may not. I don't really know yet. I have to test. I'm also actually considering switching my build entirely to the sky shards. But I've kind of got a meteor build on my wizard in Diablo, so it's like, oh, I ran out of potions already. Jeez. It's a very, very potion-heavy class. Like I mentioned, it's a squishy wizard, so there's no native heal like what the Nightblade has. And you're not going to be super robust like, say, a soldier. You're not going to have Sigil of Corruption like an occultist. You're pretty much going to be DPS. Which means a lot of potions. And a lot of your money is going to be spent on potions. We're doing one last check to make sure I didn't miss any chests. Oh, it's the yellow. Part of me wants to grab all those whites just to fill up my inventory. No exalted chest. A heroic chest, no exalted chest. That rounds out the Arcanist. Come on, guys. We're recording here. Okay, so that rounds out the Arcanist. A glass cannony. Oh, I have a point available. I didn't even... Okay, it's a very glass cannon-y class. You're going to be range DPSing like crazy, but you're also going to be huffing potions like crazy as monsters swarm you. It's a really fun class, and I think it's been my favorite class I've played so far. And going forward, I'm really bullish on what it can do with the other class combinations. I don't know if I'm going to be making 4 other videos combining this together, because it does take a while to level up characters. I may or may not, so we'll have to see about that. Oh, weapons, I don't have anything spectacular. I think my favorite thing so far has been Dementia, because it gives Arcane Will a slight bonus, and it has energy regeneration and Aether damage, which is always good for what I'm doing right now. I do have this ring that ups Electra's flash freeze, and that is a lightning weapon. I really wish I had a good Aether damage weapon, and I'd probably replace it for a green if I got a good green Aether damage weapon. Everything else is a pretty okay mix. That lightning orb is really fun too. It's a good chunk of lightning damage. I'm using Equilibrium as my relic. You could really use anything though, I think, with this, but Equilibrium just seemed to match the Arcanist best. Anyways, that'll do it for today. That was the Arcanist, a quick overview. I'll probably feature a couple builds, specifically a build based around Penetti's repeating missile as sort of a super fast spammy build, and then something based around Trojan's Sky Shard and Devastation for a rain cold fire, Aether fire from the sky. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Expect more Grim Dawn content on the way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. And I'm gonna sell. And buy potions. Freaking potions.